I welcome you to our pretty new building, the Silverman Building. We've been here for 2 years, which houses the CUNY School of Public Health, the Silverman School of Social Work at Hunter College, the Brookdale Center for Healthy Aging, and Centro, the Center for Puerto Rican Studies. We were delighted to move into the East Harlem community just 2 years ago, and we take very seriously our mission to work very actively and collaboratively with our community partners to work toward improving the health and well-being of community residents. When you entered the building, I hope you may have had the chance to notice the photo mural that was in the lobby. It's a very large photo of Jane Addams. Jane Addams, who was in 1931, she became the first American to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She was a tireless advocate for improving health and social welfare for all. And the quote that is there on that photo mural is, Jane's quote is, "The good we secure for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secured for all of us and incorporated into our common life." And in that spirit and belief, we're eager to see our next mayor take on the challenge to improve the health and well-being of all New Yorkers, and as a matter of social justice, to work toward addressing the many health inequities that are so very prevalent in many of New York City's communities, and certainly including the communities of northern Manhattan. So I thank you again for coming. I look forward to this evening's discussion of these critically important health-related issues. And I'd now like to ask Lynn Roberts, who's a senior member of the CUNY School of Public Health faculty, to come to the podium and move us along. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. And we do have an ambitious agenda ahead of us this evening and want to get started. So I'm going to introduce our moderator for this evening. To tell you a little bit about her, Lourdes Rodriguez is currently a program officer at the New York State Health Foundation. Before her current position, she was Associate Director of Community Partnerships for City Harvest's Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative. A longtime resident of Washington Heights, Lourdes has been active in many projects aimed at providing safe and inexpensive ways for residents to engage in physical activity. She was instrumental in starting Hike the Heights, an annual gathering over 1,000 residents of northern Manhattan who gathered to walk together while uniting with neighbors from all across northern Manhattan. Lourdes Rodriguez.
And thank you for the plug for Hike the Heights, which is this Saturday. You're all invited to that. Good evening, neighbors and colleagues, and welcome to our North of 96th Street Forum. It is an honor for me to be here. This forum has been convened by a broad coalition of public health advocates. They're all listed in the program, and I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to acknowledge them and thank them for the work that they've done to put this together. So thank you. We convened this forum because we are interested in learning what you, esteemed colleagues here in front, what you as mayoral candidates stand, where do you stand with regards to the health issues faced by our neighbors? We want to gauge your understanding of and commitment to address health disparities. And we would like to ensure that our issues are on the next mayor's agenda. So we look forward to continue to advocate for our constituents beside whoever becomes our neighbors. And now I would like to introduce you to our candidates this evening. Mr. Sal Albanese, former New York City Council member and Democratic candidate. Good evening, Mr. Albanese.
Thank you.
I would like to also introduce Mr. Adolfo Callon, former Bronx Borough President and Independent candidate. Good evening, Mr. Callon. And I would like to also introduce Reverend Eric Salgado, Democratic candidate. Good evening, Reverend Salgado. And there's two candidates who are on their way, and these are Mr. Controller John Liu, New York City Controller, and Bill Thompson, former New York City Controller. And they will mostly on over when they get here. All right, I would like to note that we invited all candidates But none of the Republicans could make it this evening, and the remaining Democratic candidates were unavailable to join us, but not because we didn't invite them. And before we get started, I would like to run through the agenda and quickly describe the structure of the forum. You will all have an opportunity to give us some opening remarks. These are going to be themed opening remarks, which I will provide to you in a second. And then there's going to be a series of questions on a variety of topics that have been selected by members of the coalition. You will have 90 seconds to respond to these. And people in the audience know how ruthless I can be. So I do hope that you keep an eye out on our timekeepers. Would our timekeepers please raise their hand? Great, thank you so much.
We like the 90-second rule.
Great, all right. And then you'll have an opportunity to give closing statements. And after you have taken a few questions from the audience. And this is my cue to remind the audience that if you have any burning questions, please write them in the little note, and there's a magic box over there that you can use to, drop your card with your question. We may not be able to get to all of your questions, but we will try our best to take at least 5 or 6. They may be compiled under general topics. So if you hear a similar question that doesn't sound like what you wrote, it's because they've been condensed. All right, so we're good? All right. So, I would like to invite our candidates to open today's forum by stating should you be elected mayor, Mr. Albanese, what would be the 3 top public health priorities that you would address in Northern Manhattan? And you have 90 seconds. 3 top public health priorities.
Well,
yes,
thank you. It's great to be here. I'm impressed with the turnout, and this is a topic that doesn't get a lot of attention, which is healthcare, particularly in poor communities of the city. So let me just tell you, I'm very sensitive to it because I have a master's in health. I taught in the city's public schools for 11 years, and I know how important health education is and how there is a disparity between neighborhoods. And my top priorities would be, first of all, in the area of food, to make sure that we have nutritious food going to all of our communities around the city. We have a food pipeline with community gardens and upstate farms, so that the food that the kids eat is healthy in all of our schools and all of our after-school centers. I think the breakfast program is also essential as part of that, where kids are allowed to eat breakfast in the classroom because it's essential. The worst thing you can do, and I know this as a teacher, is going into a classroom where kids are hungry. And the third priority is physical education. I think that's essential. We now know that kids who are physically active actually can perform better cognitively. So there's a correlation. So I want to make sure that every single school in the city has a real good physical education program, and we have after-school programs where kids stay engaged, and that will be helpful. That will be helpful in terms of dealing with diabetes, with asthma, and also keeping your brain sharp. I think the city of New York has neglected health and physical education, and I am committed to making sure that we fully fund it. It's not that expensive, and it's going to pay dividends in the long run. And for the first time, you'll actually have a mayor who has a health background.
Thank you so much, Mr. Albanese. Thank you so much. And I would like to take a second to welcome Mr. Bill Thompson, former New York City Comptroller. Welcome. All right, so same question to Mr. Carrion.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming and allowing us this opportunity. I want to give a shout out to my former Deputy Borough President, Earl Brown, who's here. It's good to see you. They stacked the audience. I thank you all for the important work you're doing in Northern Manhattan and for pushing for attention to this important issue. The sad truth is that zip code has become determinative of health and wellness and wealth outcomes in our country. And it's a sad fact that we're going to have to address. If I'm elected mayor, one of the areas that I will focus on is addressing the food deserts that still exist in our city. The richest city in the world, one of the most powerful, important places on the planet, and we still have neighborhoods where there is not access to healthy foods. We need to get those healthy foods in the markets. We need to work with community-based health centers to ensure that, as my friend Paloma Hernandez is doing in the South Bronx, which is to bring work with the local businesses to present and display healthy foods up front in the stores. They received an award from the Department of Health for that. I think we have the ability to create healthy living spaces to deal with the issues of poor air quality and the toxins that are in our living environment. And we need to ensure that every New Yorker has access to open space.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kennedy.
Activities all across every neighborhood in the city.
Thank you so
You were
much.
stricter with me than you were with Sal.
You finished under 90, that's why All right, Reverend Salgado?
Okay, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to express myself in this forum. It is important that all New Yorkers get the message and understand what all the candidate different ideas are. My name is Eric Salgado, and yes, one of my number one priority will be asthma. As many of you know, I was born in the Bronx. My father came from Puerto Rico in 1926. And when I was born in the Bronx, at the age of 2, they had to take me to Puerto Rico because I had a chronic asthma. And I believe that many children are going through the same dilemma. They had to be taken to Kissimmee, Orlando, or Jersey, or any other places because the pollution is unacceptable, especially in the Latino community. We had to seek for federal funding to create a green area right in top of the 278 interstate, especially in the Cross Bronx and in the Gowanus section in Brooklyn. They did that in Boston. It was very expensive. It cost over $51 billion with a B at some point. But I think our people deserve it because it is only a human right to be able to live in a place that you was born. I believe no children that was born in New York City should be prevented to actually live in New York City. That was my case, and that will be my number one priority, and also mental health facility, and as well nutrition for all our children.
Thank you, Reverend Salgado. And I'm gonna reiterate the question because you were not here when I asked it. And it is, should you be elected mayor, what would be your top 3 public health priorities for North Manhattan? You have 90 seconds.
Okay, and let me say what a pleasure it is to be here this evening. Let me, as doing shout outs since Adolfo did one, let me do a quick shout out to Simone Meeks. It is good seeing you. And Adolfo, I knew Earl Brown before you did. Okay?
Oh, you did? I know.
He was in Brooklyn first.
I know Simone.
Let me say, I think there are the 3 things as we start to look. I think the first thing, and it's one of the things that I focused on when I was controller of this city of New York, health disparities. And I think that as we look at communities of colors, we look at Black and Latino communities, we're impacted heavily in coronary disease, diabetes, so many different things that we die of, that we suffer from disproportionately to the rest of the city. And that needs to be an area of concern. It is one of the areas that I think I would look at and have my health commissioner focus on health disparities in the city of New York. Second, and one of the reports that I released about a week and a half ago that looked at the continual rate of HIV, reporting HIV/AIDS, as we look at, again, Black and Latino communities. The rate has gone down over the last 5 years about 19%, but of new reported cases of HIV and AIDS, about 78% of them are in Black and Latino communities, and so much of it is, again, focused on women. And last but not least, health in the schools. I think health, and it would be nice to bring in nutrition education.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson.
We are serious about this.
Yes.
Serious stuff, but we can tell.
Thank you. I don't want Mr.
Nope,
Carrillo to say I didn't.
To get jealous, yeah.
All right.
So this is Adolfo's fault. Thank you, man.
All right. So on to our next topic. It is physical activity for 500 points. Sorry, I
Do we have to ring in? I mean,
yes. All right. So and we're gonna start on that end of the body. As you may know, New York State mandates that children engage in 120 minutes of physical education per week. But at our schools, unfortunately, in after-school programs, this is not always practiced due to scheduling and space constraints. So our coalition has proposed two approaches for addressing this activity gap. One is to, one way of addressing this is by providing resources to schools to address scheduling and space constraints in order to have all schools comply with the New York State mandate. The other approach is to work with the Division of Youth and Community Development and other local after-school programs to find creative ways to use local parks, nature facilities, and other venues. Our question to you is where do you stand with those two approaches, and what would you do should you be mayor?
And we're starting with me.
Yes, sir.
I think that this again goes back, for those of you who don't know, I was at one point the president of the New York City Board of Education for 5 years. We tried to create focus when I was there and make sure that phys ed, that young people in our schools had more opportunity and paid more attention to the state requirements. As controller, it is one of the things that I audited and pointed out how New York City wasn't complying with that, and if anything, it has gotten worse. If we're going to talk about trying to bring down childhood obesity, I started to mention nutrition education within our schools, but physical education, again, if we don't, physical education and bringing down childhood obesity isn't a question of banning sodas of over 16 ounces. It is really focusing, and I think those two areas, whether it is tying in after school, but also during the school day. Too much of what has occurred, we have given up physical education in return for test preparation. And I think we need to understand that that's the trade-off that has been made. We can't continue to make that trade-off. So whether it is in after school, it should be during the day, not just in after school, number one. Number two, where there are facilities, and if the school doesn't have the space, we should be able to go outside in other green spaces, housing authority and other places, and schools sharing space. One school sharing the space, or the physical education space.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson. Thank you so much. Reverend Salgado?
Well, first of all, we have to concentrate in ensure that all our children get the physical education that they need. And also in the recess, we have to make sure that no educator use the recess as a way of punish the children. Most of the time when the children behave bad or something, a student behave bad in this classroom, they say, well, you're not going to the recess. We have to make sure that every children get the recess that they deserve and they need. Because it's not only about the fun that they're going to have, it's also about the physical health issue for them. Also, we have to provide for our students more program, sport-oriented and many other programs. And also we have to encourage the non-for-profit organizations that are willing to work with our youth to actually come out and use our school facility in non-school hour to actually work with our children in the city.
Thank you so much, Mr. Reverend Salgado.
120 minutes a week is not enough. We need to include more physical activity, more opportunity for sports in the schools. It has to be part of the main staple of the day. I would push as far as suggesting that there needs to be gym class every day, like it was when I was growing up. But I want to suggest something to you all. The way that we tie the DYCD funding, the Youth and Community Development funding, to the school and to the local parks and to the other facilities in the neighborhoods is we create what's called community schools. So I'm going to invite you to go to communityschools.org. Visit that, you folks who are in healthcare and wellness and this field that are thinking about these issues. The whole idea is to convert the school into the center of the neighborhood's life, almost like a town hall or town center. You then extend the day, you spill it over into the weekend. The gym and the auditorium become vehicles not only for the kids during the school day, but become vehicles for the entire community to participate in physical and arts activities. And you fund, you stream the funds
so much, Mr.
to the community school.
There's been a lot of lip service given to health and physical education over the years, but there's been really no political will to get it done. And that's really what has to happen. We all know how important it is. I mean, I grew up as a poor kid in Park Slope, and when I went to school, I had physical education every day, and I went to after-school centers. My mother was a garment worker, so there was nobody home, so I hung out after school because the buildings were open. We need to keep the buildings open 7 days a week. We need to have trained physical education teachers in our schools, because what's happened is, over the years, as physical education has been cut by the Board of Education, there's been less people going into the field. So you have less people in our education schools that are trained to be health and physical educators. So we have to make it a priority and link it as a mainstay of our educational plan in the city, because that will have a very positive impact on our kids in terms of all of the issues that I talked about, not only physically, but also emotionally, because your kids are playing together, they learn how to socialize and also perform better in school. I mean, I don't know if you saw the study that just came out just last week that was printed in the New York Times that said categorically that kids who are active do better in school intellectually because they're stimulated, and there's a tremendous link. Meanwhile, especially in poor communities, they've abandoned health and physical education. We have to bring that back.
Thank you so much. And actually, my next question is, you've sort of set it up a little bit. We're going to move on.
Glad I could have been helped.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the topic of mental health. And we would like to know what actions, including preventive actions, will you take to promote the mental health of Northern Manhattan residents in general, but to promote positive early childhood social-emotional development. So you sort of like to that.
Yeah, well,
Yes, sir.
Well, I've talked about this throughout the whole campaign. I believe that we're missing the boat when it comes to early intervention. A lot of our kids are coming into our school, particularly from poor communities, way behind at 4 or 5 years of age. We now know, and parents know this, it's not an IQ issue. It is a poverty issue. Poverty causes stress, stress causes developmental issues. And it's those 3 years, 0 to 3, are essential, and we're not doing much about it. We all support full-day kindergarten. We support stop closing our schools, stop teaching to the test, but we're neglecting that 0 to 3 age. And I want to set up a department for early learning where we consolidate all the early learning programs in the city into one agency, so they're not spread out. We can get more efficient about it, and set up pediatric wellness centers in low-income communities where doctors, parents, and teachers work together as soon as the child is born. We have now compelling evidence that those first 3 years are pivotal. So I consider it political malpractice not to address it early on, because these kids wind up being referred to special education. Many of them wind up in our criminal justice system. So the investment early on makes a lot of sense. It saves us money in the long run. It's the way to go, and it's one of the mainstays of my education planning. Will affect, obviously, mental health and all the other issues that kids, unfortunately, are afflicted with because of.
Thank you so much, Mr. Albanese. Mr. Carrion?
You know, I think one of the biggest opportunities that the mayor has, or the chief executive of a city like New York with 8.3 million people, and the bully pulpit that it allows you, is to take that opportunity to help remove the stigma about mental health and mental health services and mental wellness. We have created this big bugaboo in our society that as soon as you go for therapy or you go to see a psychologist or psychiatrist, there must be something wrong with you. Well, breaking news, we all have mental health issues that we have to deal with. And we need to make it part of the, if you will, diet of health and wellness rather than separating it as a separate category. And I think, you know, just in terms of the powerful symbolism and opportunity for leadership in this space is to really champion mental health services. And of course, you know, there are difficulties associated with poverty and with urban living that have to be addressed. But I think the mayor using that bully pulpit to its fullest extent is probably the biggest opportunity we have as chief executive.
Thank you so much. And you stayed all the time. Great. We are going to skip Mr. Liu. We're going to welcome you warmly into our forum. But we're going to skip you to give you the benefit of like every seven. All right? Thank you for joining us. Reverend Salgado?
I believe that we have to improve the services for mental health patients through community-based program. When we talk about patients with mental problem not getting the services that they need, we are talking about the whole community suffering from the consequences of that person not getting the help that they deserve or that they need. Therefore, we have to continue with the current program that we have in the city, and we have to make sure that we improve them in a way that they best serve the different community. We also have to have a better communication between our police department and this community health center, because many times when a patient is suffering from mental health problems is apprehended by the police and is retained for over 24 hours, they automatically release that person to the public without ensuring that that person is going to get the treatment that they need and the medication that they also need. And most of the time, that could result in a tragedy for the person or the patient himself or any member of the community. So we have to make sure that we have that communication between the police department and these health community centers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Salgado. Mr. Thompson?
Yes, I think there are a few things that we can do when it comes to mental health. I think that the first thing, as we start to look, is to really stop the defunding of a lot of the smaller CBOs and community-based organizations that have been providing services. You've seen consolidation of those dollars over a period of time as they're drained out of communities and put into larger organizations. That needs to stop because a lot of those community-based organizations are providing mental health services in communities. Second, I think the community schools and the Cincinnati model, and I was out in Cincinnati, you're seeing some of that in New York City now. I think there are probably 8 schools or 9 schools that are employing that model that provides both health and mental health services to schools. So when students, instead of suspending a student, instead of penalizing them for some of the things that they go through, for a fight, for a disagreement, for others, those students have access to mental health services also, as well as their families. Those are things that are very helpful. And then last but not least, looking at, and it's something I've always advocated and believed in, a string of primary care facilities that provide both health and primary care, health, mental health services to communities, rather than waiting for people to have to go to a hospital, rather than waiting for people to have a major problem. They can be treated and dealt and have the opportunity for those healthcare services earlier. I think those are ways, and particularly on the mental health side, that we can bring some of the issues that affect communities in the northern Manhattan community down.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson. And I will reiterate the question for the benefit of Mr. Liu. The question that we're addressing right now is it's about mental health. And we would like to know what activities, including preventive activities, would you promote to improve the mental health of Northern Manhattan residents in general, but also in particular to promote the positive early childhood social-emotional development?
Well, thank you very much. I apologize for being a little bit late, but nonetheless, I'm very happy to be part of this important forum. And these issues that pertain to people north of 96th Street are important to many people across the city. But we also are very cognizant of the fact that there are disparities that affect people uptown much more so than in other parts of Manhattan and New York City. And with regard to some of these mental health issues, I would start in the schools. And I've got a plan that looks at not just providing universal pre-kindergarten to 4-year-olds in this city, but I think we have to start much earlier. Preschool is something that many 3-year-olds in this city go through, but it's generally to the more well-to-do families that can afford to send their 3-year-olds to private preschools. I've got a plan that would provide preschool universally to all 3-year-olds, because I do believe that 3-year-olds have the capacity to learn. And the earlier we can start kids in school, the earlier we can detect some of these issues that may come up particularly with regard to mental health. There are also studies that show that if we start these kids down the right path in terms of learning, we might be able to forestall some of the issues. I was also in Cincinnati with Bill. While we were there at different times, but we saw the same model, where you have some programs like nurse. Well, that's a really fast 1 minute. You have that was okay, even faster 90 seconds. The nurse practitioner partnership is something that I've advocated for, where we actually have the nurses working with the families to identify issues even before any of the children get into school.
But you know what? You'll have a chance to finish that statement, because I'm going to go a little bit off our agenda. And I'm going to skip to question number 8, because it fits beautifully with the setup that you guys have done. The next question has to do specifically with school-based programs providing much-needed mental health services for children and youth. As you are aware of, there is limited capacity and treatment options for New York City youth to obtain much-needed mental health services in their neighborhoods. And as some of you have alluded, one way to increase youth access is to offer mental health services in school-based clinics. However, there are a limited number of these clinics, in part due to fiscal and regulatory constraints. And in light of this, we would like to know, how do you propose to support New York City public schools to meet the mental health needs of their students? And we're going to start with Mr. Thompson. No, Mr. Albanese. Sorry.
Oh, I'm always first. Well, good question. I obviously, one of the things that we need to do is to make education a priority. And under an Albanese administration, that would be my number one priority, because I know, as all of you know, that it addresses a lot of other issues when it comes to crime, jobs, mental health. So we have got to make sure we have a system where teachers have a manageable class size. We have activities in our school besides teaching the 3 R's, which are essential. We also have to have support services in our building. I was a high school dean, and I remember the guidance counselors in my building, their caseload was overwhelming. They never really got to talk to kids, and they're the first line of defense in terms of talking to children. You can't have a caseload of 400, 500 kids. It basically turns out to be a bureaucratic nightmare for guidance counselors. So I want to make sure we have enough guidance counselors so they can actually interact with kids, and they can refer young people out to mental health facilities in the neighborhood, CBOs that provide these services, and if we can, house them in the building. I think the model of the community school in Cincinnati makes an awful lot of sense, where support services are provided in the building. But I think we have to make sure that our schools are adequately funded so we have less kids that are going to need these kinds of services. We have to be a crisis-oriented government where we do things afterwards, like, for example, just Hurricane Sandy. For 10 years, we were warned about a storm and nothing was done. The same thing, that dynamic is, unfortunately, runs throughout our whole policy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Camilo?
Budgets are about priorities. We have a $70 billion budget in the city of New York. We have to give much more emphasis to one of our principal responsibilities, that at the end of the day is to ensure that we educate a citizenry that is able and capable to own this franchise and be fully engaged with it, and ensure that we're able to prepare them to be competitive in the marketplace that is becoming increasingly complicated and global and diverse. In order to get there, I really fully embrace the community schools model that re-engineers the way we take the funding that now goes to community-based organizations and channels their activities through the school and in relationship with the school community. Because at the end of the day, that neighborhood school that ought to be a world-class school will likely touch just about everybody in that neighborhood. And we need to make sure that whether it's mental health services, arts and culture, opportunities for sports, and so many other things that help the development of people needs to be funneled through the school. The school has to be the center of the neighborhood. I think it's a missed opportunity if we don't use this facility that's sitting there and often sitting idle after 3, 4 p.m. and for entire days beyond Friday and to, through.
Thank you, Mr. Tavio. Thank you. Mr. Liu, Mr. Controller?
I think we can have the best of both worlds. I do believe that school buildings are tremendous assets in the communities that they are situated in already, and there's really very little reason why we can't open the schools a couple of hours earlier in the morning and keep them open until very late at night. The additional cost of keeping them open is very marginal compared to trying to set up new centers from scratch. So we should leverage off of the space that we have in the school buildings. But we should also continue to work with community-based organizations on issues of mental health and other types of issues. Community-based organizations, in my opinion, are far more effective in providing services to people in communities, particularly in minority and immigrant communities, than city agencies can ever hope to be effective. So let's continue to partner with community-based organizations and direct funding to them, which in many cases are more cost-effective funding than working directly through a city agency, and have those organizations set up their shop in the school space that we would make available to these organizations. That way we have a true community center that looks at education of the kids, obviously during school hours, but provides a whole host of other services that only serve to enhance the ability of these kids to learn in that school in the first place.
Thank you so much, Mr. Liu. Reverend Salgado?
I have been saying the same thing, just like Lou just said now. We have 1,745 school facilities in our city, and we have to do better use of them, especially in non-school hour. We have to create programs. We have to make sure that we use those facilities. The Department of Education is taking 30% of our entire city budget, and we have to concentrate and utilize as much as we can the resources that we have, those physical resources like the school facility. They can be used in after school hours to actually help in this kind of program. Also, we have to give priority. There have been so many cuts in regard of this kind of program in the different Department of Education, but they are promoting all the programs that basically are going nowhere, and they spending millions of dollars in them. We have to give priority in what priority deserve, and I think all our children deserve the right treatment, because every family, especially when you are growing up in a minority, you go through a lot of struggle with your family, and sometimes you reflect that in school. We have to identify the children that are going through that problem. We have to work with the family, because most of the time when the city comes and they get a phone call from school, from social services, or anything like that, they are so afraid. They shouldn't be afraid about the city. They should be working with the city to resolve the problem that the families have.
Thank you so much, Reverend Salgado. Thank you so much. Mr. Thompson?
Again, I'm going to fall back and talk about Cincinnati briefly, if only because of how impressed I was and so many others. As John mentioned it also, he had the opportunity to go to Cincinnati, and I know I did, and so did a few others, to be able to take a look at the model that they use there. The first thing, the basic premise is it's cost neutral, which is one of the foundation points that they have there. It needs to be cost neutral. To be able to see, we look at a New York City public school, and health services, unfortunately, was or is at times vision and hearing.
That's right.
And it's not well done, and it doesn't happen at every school. And what you're seeing when you go back, at one point, in spite of that, I remember as controller working with some outside organizations that came in and did testing in a number of our schools. Vision problems were rampant, unnoticed, and our students, and I'm sure a number of those young people wound up being, diagnosed as having learning issues because they couldn't see the board.
That's right.
So I think that the things that we need to do is to really bring that Cincinnati model to New York City. It provides health care. We can start to look earlier at things like childhood diabetes and coronary issues. All those things at an earlier age, not just vision and hearing. And start to really look at it, as well as I think that having mental health services within schools would drive suspensions down also. When there's a problem, all too many of our children get suspended unnecessarily, and that will provide the additional support and create healthier schools.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson. Thank you. And I have to say, gentlemen, I want people to say, have you been to Northern Manhattan? They have a fantastic model of addressing health disparities. The way that you guys refer to Cincinnati, don't you guys want people to say we have to go to Northern Manhattan?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I will shamelessly do a shout out for dad and baby back there. I am so happy to see you taking care of baby. All right. So moving on along the spectrum of life, I would like for us to switch topics to talk about senior citizens. North Manhattan is home to thousands of senior citizens, many with chronic diseases and in fixed limited incomes. What are some specific steps you would take to create opportunities for seniors to have more opportunities for exercise, access to good nutrition, and creating an age-friendly environment? And we're going to start with Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, I think that as we look at our seniors, it is taking almost what has worked, what has made sense, and if you look at some of the best senior programs in the city of New York, they have wellness components to them. They have mental health services, you know, the ideas of loneliness and so many other things that impact on our seniors go untreated. And so I think that the first thing is we look at senior centers, we look at the opportunities there, it is bringing a wellness component in. It is not just the old, you know, let's our seniors go and sit around and just and spend time together. There are exercise programs within our senior centers. There's healthier foods that are being served within our centers. All of that makes a lot of sense. And if we bring that in, and also, again, this is an opportunity, and particularly through Medicare funding, to be able to have a serious health component. And as I said, a mental health component tied into our senior centers. It works. Some of the centers I've seen across the city of New York really create, you know, it works well. Creating additional opportunities for meal programs also work in some of the centers that work, also provide additional meals, not just a lunch, a breakfast, a dinner, real opportunity of healthier foods for our seniors. And then we also talked before, it was mentioned, you know, food deserts. And we need to be able to improve that also, using some of the tax facility. If you look at the New Markets Tax Credit Program, that can help to create supermarkets within neighborhoods. All those things.
Well, one of the things that are very needed among the senior citizen community is the nutrition. I'm running one of the biggest food pantry in my church. We serve over 1,000 people every week. And it's unbelievable to see how many people from the senior citizens community comes, and they do such an effort to come actually to the church to get the food that they need. So we had to bring the breakfast, we had to bring the lunches back, and el queso. We need the cheese back in New York City, and we're gonna bring that cheese back. Everybody remember about the cheese, right? How many of you remember about the cheese? We have to bring it back. Those are the kind of program that I want to concentrate. There's so many entitlement in this city and politicians fighting for funding, but most of these programs, they are non-fungible. As a pastor myself, never has taken a grant from the city to provide services for my community. But many programs are just non-fungible. A program that will always be fungible is food, because people eat it one way or other, and we have to concentrate on that. About senior citizen, my father, as I mentioned him, he came to New York in 1926. He passed away 2 weeks ago. And I know how important it is to provide this service. They shouldn't be fighting for it. They should have it over there, and nobody should tamper with it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ron Salgado, and I'm really sorry about your loss.
Thank you.
I am as well, and I want to thank Reverend Salgado for running his program at no cost to taxpayers. I want to find a way to help you expand that program all throughout the city.
The food comes from the food bank. That's the only thing. But everything else is brought out of the city, and I'm more than willing to expand it. That's my heart.
That's great. And you know what? I think that we need to update some of our cost models that are being applied in the city of New York. When it comes to food costs in the senior centers and the kinds of reimbursement levels that the Department for the Aging gives to senior centers, I think that it's just inadequate. And they're fooling themselves. They make up these numbers in terms of usage and the number of meals being provided, when we know in so many senior centers, the number of people who are coming for meals vastly outnumbers the number of meals that are allotted for that center. Let's take a look at this. Food actually doesn't cost that much. When the center's open already, you've got the staff there, let's provide the additional marginal cost that would require to actually feed all the seniors that are looking for nutritious meals. And the other thing that we have to look at is the provision of meals to seniors who are not able to make it to the centers themselves. We have continuing Meals on Wheels programs that have been the subject of budget dances and cuts in recent years. We've got to restore those kinds of programs and make sure that the seniors are not only getting their meals, but also getting the human visit every single day to ensure that they have some kind of contact with the outside world. And
Thank
that
you
they
so
are.
much, Mr. Controller. Thank you so much, Mr. Cannon.
I'll be very brief. I agree with what John said, and I do want to emphasize one point, which I would do as mayor, which is we need to stop this kabuki dance that we engage in every year. Every year, the executive presents a budget with severe cuts, serious cuts, to senior services, to food, to youth services, to libraries, and he knows or she knows, whoever's sitting there, full well that they have no intention of actually going all the way through with all of the cuts. But they set themselves up with the opportunity to go through this dance and maybe, if need be, use the knife. The city council then comes back. You all get stressed out and worried about how are we going to paste this thing together. All the service providers around the city, you know, it's probably really bad for the environment, right? We all march down to City Hall, we go back, we bring buses, we have press conferences, a lot of paper gets used, a lot of hot air gets put out into the environment that probably is unsustainable and irresponsible. And at the end of the day, we're not doing this in the right way. And the moral obligation that we have is to take care of the aged in our city and in our society. And I'll give a plug for this just as I close on the 90th second. We need to crack the code on assisted living residences. It's got to be affordable to New Yorkers.
Thank you, Mr.
Good points. The city council and the mayor play this game every single year. I've called for the elimination of member items where certain council members get more money for senior programs than others because the speaker likes them, or if the speaker doesn't like you, you don't get as much money. All these great programs should be baselined into the budget so we eliminate this nonsense every single year. And most of the cuts are focused on senior programs, youth programs, things that are essential and not very expensive, by the way. I represented an area in Brooklyn for 15 years with a tremendous senior citizen population. We had great senior programs there, social workers in those places, and worked with the seniors, and they sponsored different programs, activities for them, and that we need to make sure that those programs are kept in place. Meals on Wheels are important for the human contact, not only the food. And also we have two great senior assisted living facilities, one built by Catholic Charities, another built by a hospital, and we need to go to Washington. I want to be a mayor that goes to Washington and lobbies the federal government to bring back some of the funding for assisted living facilities. HUD has cut back dramatically, and more and more seniors are going to be in our population going forward. We're an aging society, so we need those programs, and they make an awful lot of sense. We know what works. We've got to fund it, and I plan on doing that as mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Albanese. And I know, Mr. Thompson, you will have to excuse
Yes, let me apologize. I've got to leave. My father is an honoree at a program this evening. As a matter of fact, my dad is 88 years old. He is still going strong. He's an honoree, and if I'm not there this evening, I'm in big trouble. I know. I don't want to see a 59-year-old man get spanked. So, don't you dare.
This one is beautiful,
Would
bro.
you like to give closing remarks?
Let me just say that first, let me again thank you all for putting this together, this focus on health. The thing that, as we look forward, the city of New York, as I talked about health disparities and the differences in how different communities are impacted by different things. If we want to talk about being a healthier city, and look, let me applaud the mayor for focus on calorie counts and the smoking ban and other things. But there's so much more that we can do to create healthier communities, to give communities of color, Black and Latino communities and Asian communities in the city of New York greater health care, greater health services, greater access to eliminating on greater opportunity to eliminating those health disparities. That's one of the things that I, as controller, I have focused on. It may be a little strange for a controller of the city of New York to be focused on areas like that. I thought it was important. It is the thing, as mayor, I would like to do. I believe that creates a healthier city for everyone, and that is what you are talking about this evening. A healthier city north of 96th Street, and that's where I live. So again, it is a pleasure in being here. Thank you so much for putting this together. Thank you.
And I don't want you to say that I'm not fair to you as well, Mr. Herrera.
Thank you. Yeah, my apologies. Yeah, I have an event that I absolutely have to get to. And, you know, these forums are happening almost just about every night. And so you can imagine how stretched we are. I had the opportunity as a member of the New York City Council, as a city planner, as borough president of the Bronx for 2 terms, as the director of the White House Office of Urban Affairs, as the regional administrator for HUD, to work on elements of these issues over a almost 25-year period. I'm looking for partners to make the city healthier, to make it a more sustainable, more livable city in all its manifestations, in the workplace, in where we live, in the neighborhood, in the experience of our children in schools, in the availability of access to health care to all income levels. It shouldn't be pegged to your zip code, and it shouldn't be pegged to your income. The best investment we can make is to ensure that that our population is healthy and well and ready to work and to be productive. As mayor, I will make it a high priority to work with you to deliver for the city where we have unfortunately still been underperforming for too long. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for the great work that you do. Thanks.
Moving right along, you guys have been setting up follow-up questions beautifully. So the next question has to do with access to healthy food. And we're going to start with Mr. Albanese. We would like to know your thoughts on healthy food. We know that making nutritious food more affordable is a proven way to assist people with limited incomes to consume healthier meals. And HealthBox is a program that the city supports, which provides an economic incentive for purchasing produce at farmers markets. Now, how would you support the HealthBox program, and what changes would you like to see in federally funded food stamp programs, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, or other types of incentives for consuming and purchasing fruit and vegetables all year round?
Well, as I mentioned before, we have community gardens in the city. We actually have lots of people growing food in the city, healthy food. So I want to make them part of a food pipeline that we get into our schools and into our communities. We have a lot of great farms upstate which provide organic food and healthy food, and I'm going to do whatever I can to provide incentives for the city to purchase food from those entities, and also we can create some good living wage jobs in the food industry, where people get paid a decent wage to provide the food pipeline, make them part of the food pipeline for the city of New York. And we're just going to have to be more creative about it. I'm going to ask my chancellor, the head of DOE, to make sure that's one of his top priorities, or her top priorities, to ensure that they work with local produce farmers to ensure that healthy food gets into the city, because some of the food that the kids eat is really doesn't taste good. It's not that healthy, and we have to address that. And part of doing that is also providing nutrition education in our schools, working with parents as well to really educate them about the importance of eating quality food.
Thank you so much, Mr. Albanese. Mr. Gonzalez?
I'm very interested in this particular program, and I think this is certainly one of the areas where I'd like to come back to a future meeting and say, hey, we emulated that program north of 96th Street throughout the entire city of New York. And this is the kind of thing that doesn't, to me, I'm the city controller. I know the finances of this city. This is not a big ticket item. And if you want to, I would ask you guys to take a look at the people's budget that I've prepared. We've taken a top to bottom review of every single item so that we don't have to go through this ridiculous budget dance every single year. Go to my website, peoplesbudgetnyc.com, and put in suggestions, for example, additional funding for this particular program, where we're taking tallies of votes, thousands of votes that have been cast over these last few weeks. And so this is a program I certainly support. On the issue overall of the people who need assistance getting food or other kinds of assistance, I think that what the Boomerang administration has tried to do to essentially criminalize people who need help, and that's certainly something that we should never ever see again in the city of New York. Fortunately, the state stepped in, and we're not going to have any more of the fingerprinting issues that have unfortunately emerged. We should not treat people who need help as criminals. And finally, in my remaining 15 seconds, let me say that I want to thank Simone Meeks for calling me day and night for weeks to make sure that I get here. I had offered a very friendly suggestion that please do not make this forum, because this is a very important forum. Please don't make this on a Thursday night, because this is what happens. This is why so many of the other candidates are not able to be here. We're trying to balance everybody's needs, and Thursdays are the absolute worst nights to do this kind of thing. But thanks for your efforts, and I just want to say one last thing about the overall health issues here. It's not just about what the public health service providers are able to do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Controller. You have a chance to come back to that. Hold that thought. Reverend Salgado.
Yeah, when it comes to nutrition, we have to make sure that all communities, they have access to organic food. We also have to make sure that in the different food pantries, we bring the vegetable that the people need, and not only canned foods, but food that actually are organic for the different community. And we also have to make sure that pregnant women and infants, they have the healthy food that they need through the system, with different programs funded by the state and also funded by the federal government. So nobody had to actually have a health issue because of bad nutrition. I have 6 children myself, and I know how important it is for them to get the right nutrition so they could grow up healthy and have any other consequences later on in life. I also have another
I think that we are ready to wrap up.
Yeah, I guess so.
So I would like to invite our candidates to take a moment to do your closing statements.
Yes, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to express myself. My name is Eddie Salgado. I'm running for mayor because I believe that there is a big disconnection between the current politician and the reality. I'm not a fancy talker, but I'm going to talk less and do more. I have been working in this city all my productive life, helping people, especially in Brooklyn, in Rackhurst, Sunset Park, and many other places, and that's what I do. I help people, not because I was running for office, but that's because that's what I love to do. And I believe being a mayor, I'm going to be able to change a lot of things and help my different communities. I had to do this because I believe today more than ever, a lot of people are relying on food stamp and in food pantry and many programs, and we need somebody, we need a leader that is going to be sensitive to the needs of the different community. And Eddie Salgado is going to be that leader that is going to be helping the different communities, because I believe that today more than ever, we need not a politician, but a leader that was going to work with all of us. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you for inviting me. Once again, my name is Sal Albanese. I'm the only person in this race who's not a career politician and who has a strong record of independence, is not accepting money from lobbyists or developers, and I'm committed to putting the people in charge of City Hall. I came here as an immigrant at the age of 8. I grew up in a working class neighborhood in Brooklyn where my mother raised us on a garment worker's salary. The public schools, the libraries, the sports programs, the City University of New York, all services the city offered helped to elevate my family from the working class to the middle class. I'm running for mayor because I want to do the same thing for future generations of New Yorkers, and I think the political system is letting them slip away. And let me be clear about one thing. You hear a lot of rhetoric about the ideas that are going to be put into place at these forums, but if you get elected owing favors all over town, none of those ideas will become reality. That's why I'm running. I don't just want the job. I want to build a safer, smarter, and fairer city. And if you believe that every child deserves a world-class education, if you believe we can keep the city safe and protect civil liberties, and if you believe that no one who works full-time should be mired in poverty, then I need your help. I've taught in our classrooms, and I have a plan to fix our schools. I know how policing works, and I have a plan to keep everybody safe in the city. I've raised the wages of workers before. I passed the city's first living wage law, and I have a plan to do it again. So with your help and your votes, we can make the world's greatest city even greater. Thank you for inviting me tonight.
Thank you so very much. And I would like to personally apologize to you because I have your questions here. And we had told the candidates that we were having this party until 8 o'clock, but they could not stick to the 8 o'clock schedule. So thank you so much. I'm really sorry that we did not get to the community questions. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.